Hello, neighbor. The lawn gnome is here.
It is so nice to meet you.
Today we're going to be talking about one of my top 10 highly anticipated films of 2019, which is the Mariel Heller-directed film A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, which stars the great Tom Hanks. And not only does it star the great Tom Hanks, but it is Tom Hanks playing the children's television icon, Fred Rogers. So, of course, me being such a fan of Mr. Rogers from my childhood and knowing the great person that he was and all the amazing things that he did for children all over the world, knowing that we were finally going to be getting a film outside of the world of documentaries, which, just in case you all didn't know, I did see the documentary about Mr. Rogers from 2018 and it is beautiful, but to finally get an actual movie that revolves around Mr. Rogers was definitely something that I was excited for. And the fact that Tom Hanks was asked to play him couldn't have been a more perfect decision, because the funny part is, it turned out that a couple of days before the film premiered, Tom Hanks found out that he's in fact a distant relative to Mr. Rogers. So to actually know the whole thing went full circle for Tom Hanks, who is just one of the most wholesome and admirable actors in Hollywood today, knowing that he will officially have left this world playing both Walt Disney and Fred Rogers is just absolutely astounding. I know this may be a little too soon, but if they ever decided to do a biopic about Alex Trebek, Tom Hanks is the first person I would choose to play him as well. So, A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood is not necessarily a biopic per se, rather it is a snapshot of a time in the late 1990s where an investigative journalist named Lloyd Vogel from Esquire magazine was asked to do a small piece for the magazine on heroes, and he was chosen to go to Pittsburgh and interview Fred Rogers. And the relationship that the two of them end up forming just because of this simple interview is definitely one that changed Lloyd Vogel's life, as well as changed all of us in a way, because there's just something about Mr. Rogers, and we all didn't really know if this really was the person that we saw on camera. Is he the same off camera? But it is just such an amazing thing to know that Mr. Rogers was one of the truest, most noble, most kindest people, and he always looked to find the good in everyone, whether they were a child or whether they were an adult. And if he saw that there was someone that was suffering inside, he wanted to find a way to help that person in any way, shape, or form. And he didn't try to make a livelihood out of that. He just wanted people to be happy with themselves, happy with the people that they interacted with, and just happy with the world around them. Because as he always said, the very best that you could do in this world is just be you. And that is what we all learned from Mr. Rogers. The movie itself is a very good film. I love the whole format, and quite frankly, I really don't want to give anything away about this film, merely because of the fact that as such a Mr. Rogers fan, I just want you all to get out there, see this movie for yourselves, and decide what you feel about this movie for yourselves. The story is very heartfelt, very emotional. It's so lighthearted at certain points and charming, and then there are certain points in time where it's very heavy and very emotional. There's even a couple of things that get very dark in this film, but it's not too dark for the fact that it's going to make you dislike this film. Acting is also fantastic. Matthew Rhys and Tom Hanks, their chemistry in this movie knows no bounds as these two people who just met one day because of the fact that someone had to do a piece on Mr. Rogers, and the friendship and the camaraderie and all the lessons learned just come throughout this small series of meetings between the two of them. And when Lloyd Vogel thought that this was just going to be a simple interview, he never would have imagined that Mr. Rogers would be such an important piece of his life. Also, Chris Cooper is in this film, and he plays the estranged dad of Lloyd, and that's also one of the main focal points of this story. But when you see Tom Hanks on screen, all I can say is that you know that is not the real Mr. Rogers on screen. But there are certain points in this movie where Tom Hanks just loses himself in the character. And while I was watching this film, there were points in time where I didn't see Tom Hanks playing Mr. Rogers. I saw Fred Rogers. And there are so many nostalgic moments, but even the non-nostalgic moments, just seeing Tom Hanks play Mr. Rogers on screen, I got misty-eyed. I even teared up a few times, because they were not necessarily sad tears, rather they were tears of joy. And also, the impact that Mr. Rogers has, you see it throughout the film. You saw the scene in the trailer with all the kids singing the theme song to Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood on the New York City subway train. But the best part about that scene is it's not just the kids. It's tweens, it's teenagers, it's mid-aged adults, it's young adults, it's elderly people, all in that subway car, just having Mr. Rogers in their presence and just making him feel good about himself because he made a career making them feel good about themselves. There's also going to be a ton of Oscar buzz around this film. Marielle Heller, I wouldn't be surprised if she got nominated for Best Director. I wouldn't be surprised if this movie got Best Adapted Screenplay, and I'm almost certain that Tom Hanks will get nominated for Best Actor. And even though I feel that the competition is going to be tough because there have been some amazing acting performances in 2019, I personally am hoping that he walks away with the Best Actor award just because of this role that he played and just touched us all with this incredible portrayal of this true icon. There are, however, a couple of interesting things, not necessarily bad, rather they are bold parts. There are some very uncomforting and unsettling moments that just take away from the overall atmosphere that you are very comfortable with, and they just spin the movie on its head for just a couple of brief scenes for the sake of pushing the story along. I don't necessarily think that they ruined the movie for me, rather I understand why these extreme off-putting moments were actually in the film, but I really feel that while they were very innovative and bold, I just feel that they weren't necessary for the overall feeling of this film. But once again, it's understood why it was done, and it definitely was something that added to the film, but it just doesn't seem to me like it was something that had to be done. But it's there. The movie's done, I've seen it, and that's just the way it's gonna be. But it is a wonderful, wonderful film. If you're a Mr. Rogers fan, you are just going to appreciate it. If you are not someone who remembers Mr. Rogers, to get a glimpse of what this man was like in this film, even though it is somewhat fabricated for the purposes of Hollywood entertainment, I really feel that they captured the essence of Fred Rogers well, and it is definitely something that will allow you to get an understanding of who Mr. Rogers was as an entertainer, but also just a man living amongst the human race. This is definitely a movie that I want to see again, and it is definitely a movie that I would like to own on DVD, just because it was wonderful. It was a wonderful film. I have wondered if it was going to be the one that would be the best movie of 2019. Right now, it's got a little bit of competition as well, but rightfully so. So who knows? This could end up being the best movie that I've seen in 2019, but we'll have to find out in just a couple of weeks. But definitely see this movie. It's such a delightful film. I'm going to give A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood 3.5 stars out of 4. So thank you very much for watching, everybody. Please leave your comments in the box below, and let's discuss A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. And I will see you in the next one. Hey, thank you so much for stopping by my channel today. If you're new here and want to see more of what my channel has to offer, please click on the link to my last video, or hit that subscribe button to be kept up to date with all of my uploads. Content of all sorts is posted here quite often, so trust me, you do not want to fall behind. I will see you in the comments, and actions speak louder than words.